Mr. Naidu, you have the floor.
Distinguished members of the board and colleagues, it is my pleasure to present to you this morning a joint response from UNDP Management and the Independent Evaluation Office responding to the independent review of the UNDP evaluation policy. At the conclusion of my remarks, the Director of BPPS, Mr. Abdoulaye Mardie, will also comment, underscoring our joint commitment to evaluation at UNDP. I am joined this morning on the podium by IEO Deputy Director, Mr. Ariel Hauge, as well as Chief of Sections, Heather Bryant, Alan Fox, Fumika Auchi, and Amina Rios, as well as Richard Jones, who will share questions, will support me in the second part of the presentation. Setting the stage for the discussion this morning, it is useful to recall that when the current iteration of UNDP evaluation policy, DP 2016-23, was approved by the board in September 2016, the board requested that it be reviewed again in 2019, with the report to be presented to the board at its annual session in 2019. The review team based their conclusions and recommendations based on interviews with a cross-section of stakeholders and a desk review of key documents. The review team consisted of 3 independent senior evaluators and development experts. The review covered the period from September 2016 to January 2019, taking into consideration contextual changes since the approval of the 2016 evaluation policy. Expectations for the review were to A, assess the progress made in implementing the revised evaluation policy of 2016, noting the strengths and weaknesses. B, review the UNDP evaluation architecture, and C, identify constraints inhibiting the effective implementation of the policy and areas that may require policy change or management decision to improve the evaluation function. An executive board paper and full review report were provided to the board, and the policy review team presented their review informally to the board on the 23rd of May. The review team has given an overall positive assessment of the implementation of UNDP evaluation policy, though also pointing to some opportunities for further improvement. The framework has recently been further strengthened through the newly revised evaluation guidelines launched in January this year and the Charter of the IEO published in December last year. In the report, the policy review team set out 11 recommendations concerning the UNDP evaluation policy principles, evaluation architecture, procedures, and quality assurance. While all the recommendations have been fully considered in collaboration with management, I would briefly like to focus this morning on 3 that are especially pertinent for UNDP, IEO, and this board. The 5th recommendation of the review proposes some mechanism to enhance the quality of decentralized evaluations through revising reporting lines and evaluation responsibilities for regional monitoring and evaluation specialists, as well as strengthening the oversight and support to decentralized evaluation. UNDP management and the IEO agree that more work is needed to strengthen decentralized evaluation quality and utility, yet suggest slightly different approaches and mechanisms, in particular with respect to the role of regional monitoring and evaluation specialists. It is not feasible to simply change reporting lines for the persons currently managing this work, due to their multiple support roles and in keeping with the principles of evaluation independence. UNDP management and IEO have agreed to propose altering the existing evaluation architecture by deploying a cadre of IEO evaluation advisors and support staff at the regional hubs. This would provide a similar regional presence to that of UNDP Office of Audit and Investigations, and is consistent with the other integrated evaluation functions across the United Nations. Under this plan, regionally posted personnel will report to the IEO director at headquarters and engage closely with the regional hubs to ensure consistency of approach and methodology. This will improve the overall quality of evaluation across UNDP and also support greater learning and ensure independence. The next recommendation I wish to highlight is the 9th in the review, which proposes changes to how funding for evaluation is stipulated in the policy and tracked at UNDP. Among other suggestions, the review recommends eliminating language in the policy that indicates funding is subject to availability and suggests a budget line be included to more accurately capture fund allocation for evaluation. Also, UNDP management and IEO propose to change the 1% allocation formula set out in the policy, such that the allotment for IEO will increase from 0.2% to 0.3% to accommodate the proposed new regional presence. UNDP will also investigate the feasibility of revising reporting mechanisms to more accurately capture evaluation expenditures, both human resources and evaluation costs. UNDP suggests the recommendation to eliminate language in the policy that indicates funding is subject to availability. The final recommendation we would like to draw your attention to is the 10th, which discusses the role of the UNDP Audit and Evaluation Advisory Committee, known as the AEAC. The recommendation states that the AEAC should no longer be part of the UNDP evaluation architecture because it reports to the administrator, thereby potentially compromising the independence of the IEO director. UNDP management and the IEO disagree with this recommendation. As stipulated in the evaluation policy, the AEAC is an advisory body, whereas oversight of the evaluation function is vested in this executive board. It needs to be emphasized that as per policy, the director reports directly to and is accountable to the executive board with full operational independence, and the board approves the costed program of work and all IEO evaluations. As an advisory board, the AEAC does not undermine the established principles of independence. We view the AEAC to be an important component of the evaluation architecture at UNDP and recall its existence was instrumental in getting the 2016 policy approved. UNDP management and IEO urge retention of the AEAC and its evaluation function and propose to examine ways to strengthen evaluation coverage within the work of the AEAC. In conclusion, Your Excellency, distinguished members of the board and colleagues, in concluding these remarks, I would like to thank the Independent Policy Review team for their work. Osvaldo Feinstein, Per Busto, and Patty Chang did an excellent job providing valuable advice to UNDP management, IEO, and this executive board. I thank you.
Thank Mr. Naidu for his presentation. I now give the floor to Mr. Abdullah Mahadi, Assistant Administrator and Director, Bureau of Policy and Program Support, to provide any additional comments on the joint management response to the independent review of the UNDP evaluation policy. Mr. Abdullah, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellency Ambassador Webson, Chair of our session, distinguished members of the Executive Board, dear colleagues, I would like, from the UNDP management perspective, to make a few brief comments following Indran's comprehensive overview of our joint management response. We welcome the review of the UNDP evaluation policy as it provides us with the opportunity to fine-tune aspects of the current policy and engage internally as well as with member states on ways to continue strengthening the credibility and utility of our evaluation function. UNDP recognizes the crucial role that evaluation policy play for accountability purposes, decision-making, and organizational learning. UNDP has, together with the Independent Evaluation Office, undertaken efforts over the last couple of years to improve the decentralized evaluation process. The joint management response, which is presented here today, indicates the close partnership we have. We are happy to note that the review overall concludes that the evaluation policy is well crafted, clear, and useful, and that it provides UNDP with a solid framework for the evaluation function. We appreciate the recognition that the policy has helped enable the consolidation of an independent evaluation office with a strengthened role and quality of work, and helped build a well-functioning evaluation architecture with arrangements that also include UNCDF and UNV. We believe that the actions planned in response to the evaluation policy review will help UNDP strengthen not only the quality of decentralized evaluation, but the evaluation function overall and the very culture of evaluation in the organization. The regionally based independent evaluation office staff will provide valuable support to the decentralized evaluation function. Prior to concluding, I would like to highlight the value we see in the work of the Audit and Evaluation Advisory Committee. The committee is an important part of the UNDP oversight function, and we look forward to continuing working together to strengthen its evaluation coverage. Subject to the approval of the board, UNDP and the Independent Evaluation Office stand ready to submit a revised evaluation policy for consideration at the second regular session to be held in September. I thank you.
I thank Mr. Madai for his remarks. I now open the floor for comments and questions. The first on my list is the distinguished representative of Switzerland. You have the floor, please.
Mr. President, I make this statement on behalf of Australia, Austria, Belgium, Canada, Denmark, Finland, France, Iceland, Ireland, Italy, Japan, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, the United Kingdom, and my own country, Switzerland. We thank the Independent Evaluation Office for its annual report, the independent review of the UNDP evaluation policy, and the management response. These reports confirm that UNDP has established an independent and impactful evaluation function. Let us also commend UNDP for its work to strengthen national evaluation capacity. We would like to make the following points. Continued efforts are needed to improve the quality and planning of decentralized evaluations and their use for learning, accountability, and communication. A strengthened capacity of IEO, increased investments in evaluation, currently at below 0.5%, and the revision of the evaluation policy are central in this regard. The policy review and management response provide useful guidance. Secondly, since this was the first report covering a full year after the adoption of the strategic plan, we would have welcomed information on how the evaluation function prepares to assess the impact of some of the new elements of UNDP's work under the strategic plan. In particular, we would be interested to know whether the IEO is involved in formulation of expected outcomes and indicators to allow the assessment of UNDP's SDG integrator function. Also, are there plans to evaluate the results achieved by the UNDP in the implementation of the plan of engagement with the Executive Board? Thirdly, the policy revision is an opportunity to include guidance on how gender equality and women's empowerment, stressed as important by so many the day before yesterday, can be better mainstreamed also in evaluation. Regarding UNDP's work in fragile settings, we ask the IEO to continue to evaluate UNDP's performance on the humanitarian development peace nexus. We would like to ask that UNDP conducts the planned evaluation on conflict prevention within this strategic plan cycle. Finally, we have read with some concern that the IEO intends to reduce its support to UNEC. We continue to strongly encourage UNDP, in collaboration with its sister agencies, to further support independent system-wide evaluation mechanisms as members of the UNEG as well as under the leadership of the Secretary General. We would like to receive clarification on where this process stands. Moreover, we would like to receive an update on the joint evaluation of the common chapter. Thank you for your attention.
Thank the distinguished delegate of Switzerland for her comments on behalf of the states mentioned. If there are no other member state comment or question, I give the floor to members of the podium and the Secretariat for a response. Gentlemen, you have... Mr. Naidu, you would like to respond?
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Some of the points mentioned do come up in the next presentation, the annual report and evaluation. But those that don't, thank you very much for the positive comments from Switzerland on behalf of various members. The strategic plan evaluation is being planned, and we are in the process of engaging with UNDP to ensure that all the elements that are listed there are adequately evaluated. It will be extremely comprehensive, also given the fact that we have a lot more historic data now from the Independent Evaluation Office that makes it possible for us to answer various questions, including the performance of humanitarian, poverty nexus, gender, etc. The issue on the reduced support to UNEG, we had been supporting UNEG for an extreme long period of time at a high financial cost. We now are an ordinary member, but UNEG is sustainable, and we continue to participate as an important member of UNEG. And in this regard, the new strategic plan of UNEG does articulate quite clearly the role of UNEG in supporting system-wide evaluation. The IEO will engage as necessary in providing advice on what the support means. With regards to the common chapter, happy to note that progress is underway, and we will be presenting, as listed, a report shortly in terms of this collaborative work. I will pause at that point because other elements would come up in the annual report on evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to associate myself with the comments provided by Indran. Just to reiterate that we have a strong interaction, IAO and UNDP management, and precisely on the common chapter. On the integrator function, I must say that when we're designing the global policy network, which is the leader in discharging the integrator function, the greatest input we got, the first input we got was from the Independent Evaluation Office, trying to capture all the lessons learned from evaluations to feed into the global policy network. Next week, we'll be organizing an internal seminar, not internal because some of you are invited to our workshop on the integrator function. The evaluation office will be part of it. So we are associating the office at the very start of the design of the integrated function. And that would facilitate down the road a proper evaluation of our offer on the integrated function. And again, thank you for Switzerland and the group for this perspective, where we would fully integrate in our way forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, we will now proceed to the annual report on the evaluation. I will first give the floor to Mr. Naidu to present the report. Mr. Naidu, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Webson. Once again, distinguished members of the board and colleagues, I'm very pleased to present to you the 6th edition of the annual report on evaluation in the new format as was required by the board, which is comprehensive. It is our series that highlights the ongoing work undertaken by the IEO to evaluate UNDP's work globally, as well as our work in support of UNDP efforts to promote a culture of evaluation, transparency, and learning. This report summarizes the status of key strategic initiatives and contains a brief analysis of the actions that UNDP senior management have taken in light of recommendations from IEO. In 2018, UNDP's IEO further consolidated its three streams of engagement: corporate evaluations that concern thematic issues of global reach, carrying out country-level evaluations of UNDP programming, and also providing guidance and tools for enhancing evaluation capacities, both internally at UNDP and externally with national partners. I will discuss each of these streams briefly in turn. The comprehensive report is available for you. The IEO corporate evaluations in 2018, we carried out two evaluations that focused on the services UNDP provides to other UN agencies through interagency pool finances and operational services. These were presented to the board in September 2018 and provided timely information on these support services in the midst of UN development system repositioning. At the end of 2018, the IEO completed an evaluation of UNDP support to poverty reduction in the least developed countries. The board received this evaluation in January of this year, and the management response is under consideration at this annual session. IEO is very pleased to acknowledge the high-level management engagement and positive response to these three evaluations. In 2019, the IEO is continuing its corporate thematic work. In particular, and as discussed earlier in the session, an independent review of UNDP evaluation policy has been considered, and a joint IEO and management response provided for consideration at this board meeting. IEO will coordinate with UNDP management to draft a revised UNDP evaluation policy for board consideration at the second regular session in September 2019. The IEO will soon launch an evaluation of UNDP support to vulnerable countries for disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. This will be the first in-depth analysis of UNDP's expanding work on climate change. In addition, the IEO will carry out a global study on UNDP support to middle-income countries, recognizing the significant differences in UNDP support to countries that pay directly and substantially for its development services. I also wish to bring your attention this morning the progress to date in response to Board Decision 2018-1 and 2018-2, an evaluation that the IEO is carrying out jointly with our evaluation colleagues from UNICEF, UNFPA, and UN Women concerning the common chapter of their respective strategic plans for 2018 to 2021. The evaluation officers will consider the implementation modalities and initial results arising from the agreed joint actions in the key collaborative areas set out in the common chapter. A phased approach is being taken, composed of three interrelated exercises and deliverables. First, a baseline study, then evaluation of accelerator initiatives, and finally, a composite evaluation of the common chapter to be presented to the executive boards of the four agencies. These deliverables will come to the board periodically starting in June 2020. Country program evaluations. Now, distinguished delegates, let me turn to the second major area of IEO activity, which is our extensive and expanding evaluative work at the country program level. As mentioned to this board at the last two board meetings, the IEO has restructured its approach to country program evaluations and now evaluates all country program documents that are coming to conclusion prior to board consideration of new country programs. In 2018, the office evaluated the work of UNDP in 14 countries and is evaluating 38 countries in 2019. Professional staffing of the IEO has been expanded to address this increased workload. Taken together, these 52 evaluations cover $7 billion of UNDP expenditure. In 2018, the IEO consolidated its findings of over 100 country program evaluations undertaken since 2002. Both the evaluation synthesis and the evaluation briefs on each offer the organization a valuable learning tool. Advancing global evaluation culture and practice. The IEO actively works to support and expand the evaluation culture globally, in particular through its national evaluation capacity conferences. To this end, Your Excellency, distinguished members of the board and colleagues, I'm very pleased this morning to announce that the National Evaluation Capacities Conference of 2019, the sixth in the series, will be co-hosted by the IEO and the Regional Bureau for Arab States, together with the government of Egypt in Hurghada from 20th to 24th October this year. In 2018, the proceedings from the 2017 National Evaluation Capacity Conference held in Istanbul were published, including 46 papers from 70 leading thinkers and participants. During 2018, the IEO organized and participated in several other key events, including a high-level dialogue in the UK, focusing on revisiting independence, objectivity, and the critically reflective role of evaluation for the SDG era. During 2018, the IEO worked closely with the UNDP Bureau for Policy and Program Support, the 5 regional hubs and country office colleagues to revise and rewrite the evaluation guidelines for the organization. The guidelines were formally launched globally by UNDP Administrator and IEO in January 2019. The new guidelines have been translated into French and Spanish, with Arabic and Chinese versions soon to come. Training on the new guidelines is being rolled out in 2019 across all regions. Upcoming will be an online training and certification program for all UNDP staff for evaluation. Also of note, the IEO continues to pilot and refine a national diagnostic tool developed with the support of the Norwegian government. Piloting of the online tool is underway in Senegal, Nepal, and Uganda, following a launching workshop in Rwanda in June 2018 with 14 national government representatives. Oversight and support to decentralized evaluation. IEO continues to work to strengthen the oversight of decentralized evaluation planning, implementation, and quality. The office manages the Evaluation Resource Center, now holding more than 5,000 evaluations of the work of UNDP and aiding in the oversight of evaluation planning and implementation in all UNDP offices. In the annual report, we note that during 2018, there was a reduction in the number of evaluations implemented across all UNDP program units, with completed evaluations falling to 283 from 340 in 2017. Given this overall reduction, the mandatory evaluations, especially those required as an implementing agency of the Global Environmental Facility, now make up the majority of evaluations being undertaken by UNDP. Of the UNDP evaluations in 2018, 43% were for GEF projects, despite the fact that GEF projects accounted for only 9% of UNDP expenditure and 17% of projects carried out last year. A further concern also mentioned in last year's annual report is that the organization continues to overpromise and underdeliver when it comes to evaluation planning. In 2018, 504 evaluations were planned, yet only 283 were actually completed by the 31st January 2019. The IEO continues to quality assess all evaluations during the year. As a leading development agency, the criteria and band for success should be satisfactory and highly satisfactory. Using this level, there is still considerable progress to be made, and IEO and UNDP is working on a rollout of training and capacity building at the regional level to improve this result to meet this success criteria. More work needs to be done, especially in the use of evaluation across the organization for learning as well as accountability. The new evaluation guidelines plus training and tools now under development are expected to raise the quality and use of evaluations across the entire organization. Yet accountability by management at the regional and country office level is needed to ensure evaluation plans are realistic as well as strategic and implemented according to plan. IEO staffing and finances. Turning to resource issues, please note that the IEO have a highly professional staff reflective of the goals, ethics, and nature of UNDP, which includes 22 international professionals and 9 general service staff. This year, 8 temporary staff positions will be made permanent. In 2018, funding for IEO was $8.7 million, equaling 0.19% of UNDP core and non-core expenditure. Taking into account also funding for evaluations commissioned by the country and program offices, the combined expenditure on evaluation reached $22 million in 2018, or 0.48% of core and non-core expenditure. The percentage is essentially unchanged from 2017 and represents less than half of the 1% goal of evaluation expenditure targeted under the UNDP evaluation policy. Moving forward, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes my presentation of the annual report on evaluation for 2018. In reading the report, I hope you recognize both the accomplishments and the challenges facing UNDP as it strives to lead by example as a transparent and learning organization. Repositioning of the UN development system will usher substantial changes to UNDP and how it operates, and the IEO is adapting to these changes by doing more joint evaluations with other UN agencies, by expanding its evaluative efforts at regional and country office level, by closely collaborating its work with the UNDP Audit Office, where practical, thank you, Helg, by retaining its leadership position in the UN Evaluation Group, and by carrying out its mission in a professional and efficient manner. It has been a productive year for IEO, and I wish to thank once again the board for its support to the function, Administrator Akim Steiner for helping create the space for critical reflection through his leadership, UNDP management and staff, and finally, my committed team for responding to the call from the board for full coverage of UNDP portfolio and producing high-quality work. The members of the Audit and Evaluation Advisory Committee and the Evaluation Advisory Panel also need to be thanked for their support at different junctions. I thank you for your attention.
I thank Mr. Naidu for his presentation and now give the floor to Mr. Day to present the management commentaries to the annual report on evaluation. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Your Excellency, Ambassador Webson, distinguished members of the board, dear colleagues. On behalf of UNDP senior management, I would like to thank Director Indran Naidu and his team in the Independent Evaluation Office for the work conducted in 2018 and for putting together this thorough report. We appreciate the collaboration with the Evaluation Office and look forward to continuing working closely together. I would also like to reinstate senior management's commitment to ensure that learning from evaluation is at the center of the agenda and informing decision-making. Let me reflect on some positive developments and findings. As part of UNDP efforts to invest in becoming a more results-oriented, evidence-based organization, we take particular note of the following positive findings reported on in the 2018 annual report on evaluation, which we will consolidate to further improve our development, efficiency, effectiveness, and impact. Key findings of the three 2018 thematic evaluations. 1, UNDP has the largest geographical footprint of operational services among all United Nations entities and is currently serving over 80 of these organizations in about 170 countries. 2, the Multi-Partnership Trust Fund Office has established itself as a strong, credible, and neutral provider of pooled financing services and is recognized by most donors and agencies as the preferred choice for an administrative agent. 3, UNDP poverty reduction programs and priority areas are highly relevant for the LDCs, and UNDP remains the agency of choice in LDCs for policy and implementation support, and we'll come back to it later. The revisions of the evaluation guidelines led by IEO in close consultation with the Bureau for Policy and Program Support, regional bureaus, and country offices reflect UNDP commitment to evaluation and its desire to improve evaluation quality, credibility, and usability in capturing lessons learned and ensuring future work is informed and strengthened by past experience. Through the 2018 Result-Oriented Analysis Report, the ROAR, UNDP strengthens its efforts to disaggregate evaluation-related expenditures and delineate reporting on monitoring and evaluation expenditures. The completed 2018 independent country program evaluations found that UNDP overall has solid relationship with governments, the capacity to respond and adapt to emerging needs, and successfully supported countries in implementing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the SDGs at large. UNDP's financial investment in the evaluation function continues to increase. The 2018 total expenditures on evaluation of $22 million indicate an increase of 11% compared with $19.8 million in 2016. The IEO allocation was in line with the annual budget for the IEO, approved by the board in 2018, and the 0.2% benchmark also. The percentage of evaluation reports rated moderately satisfactory or highly satisfactory increased from 72% in 2016 to 76% in 2018. And more importantly, the percentage of evaluations rated satisfactory increased from 19% in 2017 to 25% in 2018. But some challenges remain. The report highlights challenges related to evaluation plan design and implementation. We do acknowledge that out of the 500 evaluation planned in July last year, only 56% were completed. We also note the decreased overall number of evaluations, particularly for UNDP project evaluation. While 500 evaluations might not be realistically implemented in 1 year, UNDP usually does around 300 evaluations. What is key is that there is evaluation coverage of our programs to ensure accountability and learning. To address this, we have taken a few measures that I would like to list. The revised guidelines specify the evaluation that are mandatory and projects that require an evaluation. They also spell out how to strengthen design, implementation, and review of evaluation plans, knowledge which is reinforced through regional workshops and webinars that are currently carried out. We have also strengthened the headquarters program appraisal committee quality review of country programs documents evaluation plans. An annual organizational performance group review of the evaluation function will be established to improve management accountability and oversight. A quarterly review and dialogue on evaluation issues and knowledge sharing between the Bureau of Policy, the Independent Evaluation Office, the regional bureaus, UNV, UNCDF takes place. And finally, the Evaluation Resource Center now sends out regular notification reports on the program unit status of implementation, as well as upcoming and overdue evaluations and management response. Challenges in adhering to the 1% financial benchmark relate to the decentralized nature of UNDP's program evaluation budgets. Consistent with our cost recovery policy and procedures, allocations for decentralized evaluations are required to be included in program and project budgets. UNDP has committed to investigate the feasibility of establishing a reporting mechanism for evaluation expenditures to improve reporting on financial and human resources. Challenges related to the quality of decentralized evaluation has been a recurrent topic of discussion. We take the fact that 24% of the quality assessed evaluation were of unsatisfactory quality. We take it very seriously. A series of efforts have already been undertaken, like strengthened quality assessment process for decentralized evaluation, updated evaluation resource center, regional evaluation workshop, and revised evaluation guidelines. UNDP and IEO also continue to work closely to address the challenges. For example, by rolling out the guidelines through regional workshop. We had one in Europe in February 2019 and one in Africa in June 2019, and this will continue. Webinars on various topics are also being conducted through 2019. My concluding remarks. I would like to reiterate UNDP's commitment to further enhancing the evaluation function. We consider evaluation key to ensuring that the organization further improve our programmatic and operational approaches, tools, and decision-making. We will continue to build on areas where we are doing well and further analyze and work on areas where we need to do more. We hope that the revised guidelines and the action planned in response to the evaluation policy review will help this process. I thank you for your attention.
I thank both Mr. Day and Mr. Naidu for their presentations. I will now open the floor for comments and questions from members. The floor is open. Time there are no further.
No way.
I give the floor to the distinguished colleague from Norway.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, and thank you so much for this this overview and comprehensive analysis. Norway would like to commend IEO for finalizing the synthesis of the country evaluations finalized in the period 2002 to 2016. And we commend IEO for increased coverage of country evaluations. However, the quality and use of this should be emphasized. Norway also encouraged UNDP to increase the focus on the coverage and quality of decentralized evaluations, and we are very happy to see that you have taken measures to deal with this. This should also be seen in relation to the resources set aside for evaluations, especially at the regional level. We are also pleased, of course, with the UNDP's leadership's focus on the use of evaluations and to use these evaluations to guide its strategic direction. We are also happy to see that that you have taken measures regarding the high percentage of the 24% decentralized evaluation that is considered to be under acceptable standard, and the measures that you have taken, because of course this is also something that we see is a serious matter. So thank you.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Norway for her comments. As there are no further comments or questions, I give the floor to the members of the podium for any response. Mr. Naidu, would you like to start?
Thank you very much, Ambassador and distinguished colleagues, delegates. The response on the annual report from management has been excellent. All the areas that have been pointed out have a very clear action plan, and we have been engaging closely in co-creating in order to improve the overall evaluation function of UNDP. I think we are moving away from the bifurcated model where it was IEO and then you had the UNDP dealing with the rest of the evaluation. We're trying to bring them much closer together, and also with the new evaluation architecture, the rollout of IEO personnel in the regions, and working closely with UNDP and other UN agencies in evaluation, audit, oversight, learning hubs will improve in a very short period of time. In fact, we are going to be rolling that out in the next few months, and that's been very important. The IEO also has spent a lot of time engaging in the learning element in particular, and the point that was brought up about the country-level evaluations by the distinguished delegate from Norway. The country-level evaluations, as you would note, are prerequisites for the new country program document. But in addition to that, our focus has been on quality. So we engage very intensely with the donors, the government, as well as the UNDP and UNCT colleagues at the beginning of the evaluation, and we now debrief at the end of the same evaluation. So again, it's about the learning, the engagement, and the interaction in order to ensure there's a human face to it. We have moved up fourfold from country program evaluations over the last 6 years. The average time spent in a country program evaluation, the old ADRs, used to be 17 months. We now finish it in 6 months. The average cost was $170,000. We're now at under $50,000. We do it in one mission. So within the envelope that has been allocated to us, we are doing a lot more and trying to get efficiency, but also be effective and make sure that there is the human element and the engagement. And that's been highly appreciated. We will be engaging with members of the Evaluation Advisory Panel as well as the Audit and Evaluation Advisory Committee to also measure some of the qualitative elements of what this evaluation is, the engagement. So while there's an accountability dimension, it may appear that it doesn't allow for learning. We have found that we've been able to strike the happy balance between the independent evaluations serving both purposes of accountability, learning, and through that, a constructive dialogue. And my team on the stage here are personally engaged on those 38 countries around the globe this year. It's a complete new way of doing things. All the reports, as you know, are available. And also you would notice is that all management responses are now in the evaluations, including the country program evaluations. So that will indicate where they've agreed, partially agreed or disagreed. And we reserve it is the prerogative of management to do that. And I think that also shows a greater transparency in instances. What is important in the agreement, partial agreement or disagreement is the explanation that is provided. So that is in the repository. We are the largest evaluation office in the UN system by budget, also with a very strong policy and independence. And the policy is being replicated in many other agencies now because it has entrenched the element of a professional function, which is what we emphasize. It has to be independent in order to be professional and to also have the access through the ground. So as I have pointed out in various junctures, the function has progressed tremendously. Thank you very much to the board for their support throughout. And we are in a place where we work very, very productively with Ma and colleagues. And as I mentioned, the space created for critical reflection does come from leadership. And that has come and is allowing us to work and to actually build a stronger UNDP and also support UN reform as we do so. Thank you very much.
Tilde, you want to make any comments?
Thank you, Ambassador. Just to take note of Norway's remarks, and I do fully agree that 20 to 25% of unsatisfactory rate of evaluation is not the way to go for an organization that wants to build the culture of evaluations in its DNA. I am confident with the artillery that we are putting forward, and I sketched a few of the elements of that artillery in my statements that will bring the number down. And Indran is right. It starts with leadership, and you have heard the commitment of the administrator and the commitment of the entire executive group. Just to tell you that when we were doing the induction of the 120 new resident representatives, we stressed that evaluation should be the primacy of their tools to move forward their programs. And with the close monitoring that we are impressing forward, I am confident that when we meet next time, this will be an area of the past, and we are doing all our efforts to bring the numbers down and to be a leader of in the UN system as the evaluation agency, as we called ourselves. These numbers got to go down, and I would like to give you here the entire commitment of UNDP that we are doing all in our power to bring it down. And again, I'm very confident that when we report next time for 2019, these numbers will go significantly down. And the initial result that we are getting points to that direction. Thank you.
We thank you and we take note of your commitment to bring the numbers down in the next report. Thank you so very much. Colleagues, we will now proceed to the management response to the evaluation of the UNDP support to poverty reduction in least developed countries. Colleagues, noting that Mr. Naidu has already provided some overview comments on the evaluation in his remarks on the annual report on evaluation, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Abdullah Mahadi so that as the assistant administrator, so that he can present the management reports. Mr. Abdi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear distinguished delegates, it is a paradox of our societies that with so many resources, knowledge, technology, and innovations, poverty has not been eradicated. The reasons for this vary. Where economic growth happened, it may not have been sufficient, sustained, or inclusive. For instance, 7 of the 13 fast-growing economies in the world are among least developed countries, like Bhutan, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ethiopia, Mozambique, Myanmar, Rwanda, and the United Republic of Tanzania. We all know that growth is a critical element to eradicate poverty, but not sufficient. In a business-as-usual scenario, with rising inequalities, where growth bypasses most of the population, the international commitment to eradicate extreme poverty will not be met by 2030 if the trends continue. As the income gap across our societies increase and access to opportunities decrease for certain segments of the population, persistent inequalities further deepens poverty. So, how to truly move the needle on poverty? First, let's make it clear, there is no silver bullet. There is no silver bullet. Our clear set of policies and related competencies that, if applied, will result in poverty eradication. Poverty is directly dependent on context, types of problems, and priorities. Take the least developed countries, for instance. There are striking differences within this category. Out of the 47 LDCs, 17 are middle-income countries, 9 are small island development states, 17 are landlocked, and 20 are considered fragile. Therefore, our approach to poverty eradication must be context-specific and multidimensional. In 2018, independent evaluation of UNDP's the 2018 independent evaluation of UNDP's support on poverty reduction in LDCs has been a critical source of learning for UNDP. The evaluation recognizes that UNDP's poverty reduction approaches are highly relevant to LDCs and that UNDP remains the partner of choice for both policy and implementation support. The evaluation further recommends that UNDP builds on key strengths, including revitalizing local economies or recovering from conflict, furthering multidimensional approaches to tackling poverty, and deepening collaboration with relevant partners. It also sets out where we can improve. For example, it recommends that UNDP improve the interlinkages between community-level sustainable livelihood programs and rural poverty alleviation policies, strengthens efforts to partner with the private sector, and pay special attention to youth and gender-responsive policies and programs. The management response to the evaluation on UNDP's work on poverty in LDCs focuses on the what, including the priority areas which are integral to UNDP's poverty offer and that will facilitate overcoming the structural barriers for development in LDC settings. Our strategy on poverty eradication expands from a poor focus to an inclusive approach to development. Multidimensional poverty and inequality measures. On multidimensional poverty measures, UNDP will continue to strengthen its leadership by investing in applied research, technical capacities, promoting partnerships, and catalyzing multi-stakeholders dialogues. In collaboration with Oxford University, we will launch a handbook on how to prepare a national multidimensional poverty index. And by the way, as of today, we have already 29 countries engaging in multidimensional poverty reports. As part of our efforts to measure human impact of our work, we have introduced a new Leave No One Behind marker, which identifies 18 priority groups of people targeted during project implementations, including people living in rural areas, persons negatively affected by armed conflict or violence, internally displaced persons, people living in multidimensional poverty, women, youth, persons affected by natural disasters, refugees, unemployed persons, and persons with disabilities. On planning and budgeting, we will continue to prioritize this area with an emphasis to multidimensional poverty and concrete policy interventions to address leaving no one behind. Experiences such as from the government of Bhutan's 12th five-year plan, which has identified 14 vulnerable groups through a vulnerable baseline assessment, will inspire our offer to integrate targeted intervention addressing the needs of marginalized groups into planning and budgeting. On shocks, conflicts, and fragility, UNDP will continue to work closely with humanitarian, peace, and national partners to jointly identify medium-term collective outcomes that have an impact on protracted humanitarian challenges, including poverty indicators. On climate change, we know climate impact alone is expected to drive an additional 100 million people into poverty. UNDP adaptation work assists LDCs in tackling multidimensional poverty by promoting diversified and climate resilience livelihoods, productivities, and incomes. UNDP will further strengthen its poverty and environment impact and synergies under its sustainable livelihood programs, across country programs, and vertical fund engagement. UNDP will continue working with countries to achieve inclusive and sustainable growth. Together with UNCDF, we will scale up our support to LDCs to promote inclusive business development and financial inclusion programs. Other relevant issues. In line with our gender equality strategy, which we discussed yesterday, we will prioritize the removal of structural barriers to women's economic empowerment. This includes a new program on inclusive and equitable local development with UNCDF and UN Women to facilitate women's participation in the labor market. In our poverty offer, we will also systematically prioritize the empowerment of youth. In Rwanda, for example, the Youth Connect platform is now operating in 10 African countries. We will continue to collaborate closely with UNICEF under the Generation Unlimited initiative and with ILO under the Decent Jobs for Youth initiative. Now on the how, on the delivery mechanism. The management response also focuses on the how, which are the delivery mechanism for our offer, including the Global Policy Network and its community of practices on poverty and inequality, the Acceleration Labs, and the Finance Sector Hub. Internally, UNDP will leverage the Global Policy Network and its Poverty Community of Practice, our largest knowledge network with a growing membership of over 4,000 staff, to drive its renewed offer. share knowledge, and build a solid foundation of in-depth technical expertise across country, region, and global teams. Our finance sector hub will provide a network of finance expertise to equip countries with the best advice and service on SDG impact, climate finance, nature-based financing, Islamic financing, blended finance, and others. Before I conclude, let me recognize that the management response to this evaluation is the result of extensive consultation with member states, the Independent Evaluation Office, and UNDP staff members, which have been unprecedented. On behalf of UNDP, I would like to thank you for engaging with us throughout this process and for your continued guidance. The management response provides practical, time-bound, key actions to deliver on our renewed poverty reduction offer. I thank you.
I thank you, Mr. Day, for your presentation. I now open the floor for comments and questions from members. I give the floor to the distinguished delegate of Norway.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for both a comprehensive a comprehensive process, actually, when it comes to dealing with this evaluation. It's highly appreciated, and as you know, it's something that also Norway has been heavily involved in, both after the board meeting that we had in January. We even organized a seminar in May with representatives from UNDP here in New York to look even more deep into how, we can feed into your work on how to address this. And we, of course, welcome your updated management response to the evaluation. The response has now a well-developed plan for UNDP's follow-up of central findings and recommendations. Let me just highlight something that is of special importance to Norway. UNDP should be concrete and specific on its added value on country level when it comes to building national ownership to integrated solutions. You should work through strong partnership across sectors and levels of society with broad participation from governments, private sector, research communities, specialists and think tanks, especially among those located in the South. I think this also goes well hand in hand with your integrator role. You should give priority to develop, implement, and learn from and report on phases in long-term programs that target contextual, multifaceted structural reasons for poverty. Sometimes I think we have the tendency from the donor side to be impatient when it comes to, we want results immediately. When it comes to tackling poverty, we need really to have a long-term strategy and be patient. That's why the long-term programs, I think, is of special importance. It's also important that you are concrete and specific on how to strengthen your efforts when it comes to women, youth, and persons with disabilities, and integration of these efforts in your work on poverty eradication, since these are the groups that are very often the ones who are left behind. Thank you so much. That was the main comments.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Norway for her comments. Floor to the permanent representative of Malawi, who is the chair of the LDCs at this moment. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm indeed speaking on behalf of the LDC group in thanking UNDP, UNFPA, UNOPS, and their board members for their various briefings and inputs over the last 4 days. LDCs aim to achieve the SDGs and meet the targets in the Istanbul Programme of Action. Meeting these ambitious goals requires additional finance for LDCs, both public and private. In 2018, however, we note there was a decline in ODA to LDCs. Even direct foreign investment to sub-Saharan Africa has also dwindled. In this context, we commend UNCDF for its sharp focus on LDCs and for making finance work for the poor in the LDCs. We commend UNCDF for the impressive results achieved in the first year of implementing its strategic framework. These results show how a small and focused organization can play a big role in getting gender-responsive finance flowing to where it's most needed, by demonstrating what is possible to public and private investors, and in so doing, in helping to change the dynamics of how finance is allocated. While many of us talk about what we can do on issues of strategic financing, UNCDF is showing each day what is possible and how small amounts of risk capital, well targeted, can start to shape markets and make them more inclusive. In Malawi, for example, UNCDF has supported a market development approach to accelerate the growth of digital financing. Through UNCDF work and that of others, the Malawi digital finance services market has evolved significantly. The percentage of adult population actively using digital finance in the country grew from 1% to 24% in 2018. We also commend UNCDF for its thought leadership role. Its report on blended finance in LDCs is helping to lead the discussion on how best blended finance strategies can be made to work for LDCs. And such work is critical if LDCs are to benefit from new approaches in financing for development. As LDCs, we appreciate the role UNCDF plays in keeping LDCs at the center of the international development discussion and making sure our voice is heard. Finally, we note with concern the continued shortfall in UNCDF's core resources and encourage member states in a position to do so to help UNCDF to achieve the funding goals set forth in its strategic framework. We implore UNDP and UNCDF to continue discussions with the World Bank to see how best we can unlock IDA and IFC resources with the participation of the private sector, of course. We have heard statements of from billions to trillions, but these trillions are not flowing to the LDCs. We also hope that the Global Climate Fund would find ways of dispersing funds in a fast way to the LDCs. It takes a long time for them to release funding for climate financing. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for all the reports that have been made here on behalf of the LDCs I submit. Thank you.
I thank you, Ambassador Dr. Legoaf, Permanent Representative of Malawi to the United Nations, representing the LDCs, for your comments and your questions. If there are no further comments from the members, I will give the floor to the Secretariat for a response. Mr. Dear, would you respond on behalf of the Secretariat?
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you, Norway and Malawi, for these valuable comments. Let me first say that I would like to emphatically second Norway's comment. First, on the interactive process that we have put forward in responding to these management evaluations, I see it as a model, and I call it a golden triangle. The way that the board, the evaluation office, and UNDP has been interacting to respond to this evaluation is unprecedented. I would submit that this is a model that we need to replicate. We at the management level, we have seen it are very valuable in shaping our offer forward. If I were to make a recommendation, I would like to recommend that this be a model forward. I also do agree with you on the emphasis you put on national ownership, going beyond government and including all sectors. In fact, that is the philosophy behind the 60 labs that we are putting forward, where we bring not only government actors, but civil society, private sector, and academia, so that we can shape the plans forward. And this is proven to be a new way of working, which is quite inclusive. And I agree with you that if we want to really see impact, we have to have our eyes set on the long term. And this resonates well with what Akim Steiner said yesterday when he was asked about what is the value of UNDP in terms of development outcome. He said that what development outcome takes time. You have to have long-term views to measure it. And I would agree that this is the way forward. That's why UNDP is investing a lot in supporting government in having long-term planning and then fitting whatever we do on the short term to be in the framework of long-term actions. On the leave no one behind, we are pushing forward on ensuring that when countries look at their budget, because the budget is the most powerful tool that has a country, that not only we ensure that the budget are SDG sensitive, not SDG blind, but also leave no one behind sensitive. We are engaging the IMF and the World Bank, especially the IMF, and we have done it in Tajikistan, when we do Article 4 consultations, when we look at the budget, we ensure that in those Article 4 consultations, we recommend that the budget are SDG sensitive and most particularly leave no one behind sensitive. Unless we ensure that the budgets are leave no one behind sensitive, it will be very difficult to have inclusive growth. So I would like really to second your three recommendations. Thank you, Malawi, for recognizing the work done by UNCDF. In fact, UNDP is supporting UNCDF in more than 30 countries to deal with inclusive growth, and that's the way to go forward. I do recognize that sometimes there is length in disbursement, and this is something that we have to work with the GCF and the JEF so that we have speedy disbursement. But where we see also bottlenecks is not only on the disbursement, it's also on the absorptive capacities. In many of these countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, we have seen that absorptive capacity is around 40 to 60%. So you have 40 to 60% other resources that are quite dormant, and this is a huge lost opportunity cost that we have to address. We are engaging with the World Bank, and we are offering our service as UNDP and the UN system at large to support the bank in ensuring that the IDA resources are highly absorbed. If we manage to improve the speedy of release of funds, if we manage to improve the high absorptive capacities of government, I think our overall impact will be higher. So I really would like also to second your recommendations. If you would allow me, since the bulk of our LDCs are in Africa, I would like to, Mr. Chair, if you would allow me, to ask Ms. Ahuna, the Director of Africa Bureau, to share some perspectives.
Absolutely. Madam Ahuna, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President and Chair. I also want to really associate myself with the comments that came from Norway on those very important progressive views related to long-term perspective, as my colleague Mara mentioned, but also national ownership. We're finding that for the Africa region, these 2 points are very key because you cannot impose development solutions from outside. They have to be cultivated from within the countries, and they have to be owned and led by the countries and the people. So we're working in this way very much in the Africa region, and the expansion of partnership. Also now it's looking at African institutions. If we take the African Union, which has just established an African Union Development Agency, UNDP has now had discussions with that agency and we've come up with an agreement on how we will support the agency and work together for those long-term possibilities. The same with the Africa Development Bank. We have just adopted an aid memoir, which we look at where our work can be linked so that we're achieving greater impact in some of these areas. And we can say the same for several other African institutions. We're finding, of course, that the bottlenecks that countries face in development go beyond just the development sphere, and we need to therefore work in a cross-pillar manner. For instance, in the Sahel and the Lake Chad region, which a region that is really plagued by insecurity right now coming from extremist activities and overwhelming the development landscape. Here, we cannot operate alone. We need to invest more capital in sub-regional organizations such as ECOWAS, OEMA, and others that need to work both on the political and security elements to create an enabling environment for development to take root. But also, we need to work in a cross-border manner. And UNDP is investing also some of the resources on the accelerator labs in regional cross-border resource centers that will be focused in the Sahel and also the Horn to really give us an opportunity to develop new ideas and new models on how we are able to work along the borders where we're finding growing poverty in a very deep way. There's an escalation in this marginal context, which are far removed from the center and therefore often left behind, and how we need to extend development models to work in these areas. I also want to say something about financing. I think we're finding that we need to invest in ways that make Africa's resources, Africa's money work for Africa in reducing poverty. It is difficult to see how this will happen when we continue to see billions and trillions of dollars in pension and sovereign funds from the continent parked outside the continent. And of course, we have also illicit financial flows, which is calculated as a big leakage or drain on the continent's financing. And the AU's work that is focused on tackling illicit financial flows will find that needs to be given a global platform and needs much more discussion. On women economic empowerment, I want to see an opportunity in the recently ratified Africa Continental Free Trade Area. I think this is an area that we're very keen on studying to see how we can utilize that moment to improve the environment for women's engagement in trade, for instance, because the vast majority of those who do cross-border trade will find are women on the continent of Africa. And how does this new opportunity affect their ability to expand that economic engagement. Finally, I think to say something about the risks that face many of the countries we're talking about today, and how to build in models that make development plans risk-proof or disaster-proof, because we see the huge impact of climate change today on many development trajectories. How do we make these development plans disaster-proof? I think that's something we're working on through disaster reduction and also climate change action activities. I thank you.